going to continue a discussion from another episode where we talked about importing data into OneSource tax provision using import spreadsheets and also exporting the data. So in that earlier episode, we walked through all of the tabs that come out when you are exporting data out of the software. So as you saw, and I'll just pop back into that, we've got maybe 50 or 60 tabs that are coming out, and it can be, quite overwhelming. So what if you don't need all of that information? What can you do? So a lot of times we are doing setup. I'm just popping into my units, listing my managed units area here. So one of the nice things about the version 26 iteration of OneSource tax provision is that you have the ability to export out things for particular screens instead of exporting all of the tabs that you just saw in that spreadsheet. So you can kind of work on just specific functionality, and it's a little bit more manageable in terms of the data. So if we don't want to export out the entire data set, which is always an option because you have everything there, you can kind of delete the tabs that you don't want. But let's say you just kind of want to work on activating some units in some jurisdictions. So I'm going to just export all units here, and it is going to pop up for me, and you will notice all that is in this file are two tabs: pound S pound and a pound U pound tab. And these are the tabs that are needed for our setup of units within the software. So that's our pound U pound. Now this is within the data set, I should clarify, because the units are already, the shell for the units are already created in the administrative area. But this is actually what we call activating them for use within the data set. So the pound U pound is activating the unit itself from a federal perspective. The pound S pound is activating a jurisdiction to a unit. So you can see there's a many to one in this instance, whereas the pound U pound is a 1-for-1. So on the pound U pound, we're going to be able to put in our rates, our statutory rates, beginning, ending, deferred rates. This is also where we will come and deal with our pre-tax book income policy. If we want to do filing groups, you'll come here. If we want to turn on NOL automation or valuation automation, this is all here as well. And similarly with the states, it's our apportionment rates, it's our statutory rates, and our federal benefit of state deductibility. What percent is that going to be? Is it 100 or 0? And do we want to turn on any automation on that as well? Now, if I'm going to import this in, unfortunately, there is no option on this screen to import the pound U and the pound S tab back in. So for this particular one, we're going to have to come back to the data set itself and import using the spreadsheet import option. I'm going to pop in to my review and edit screen, and we had talked about temporary differences in the session where we just kind of went through import, export functionality. So I'm going to do something similar here where I'm going to export out of this screen. Just going to call it temps and export my file. And when we open that file up, we are going to get, in this instance, 4 tabs. So what's happening now is that depending on the screen that we pick to export out of or import into, I'll start with exporting, these tabs that we get will only be the tabs that pertain to that type of activity. So if I go back to my temps, you will notice that I've got the pound STD tab and the pound UTD tab, along with the pound S for the states and the pound U tab. So if I go back into my original data set, those were all, there's my pound UT, my pound U tab, my pound UTD tab. And if I scroll over a little bit more to my state here, I've got my pound S and my pound STD. So within your 60 or some odd tabs, these existed, but I only want to kind of look at my temps. So it's going to export out the things that are relevant to that screen. And the assumption is that you're possibly going to use this to import back into the software. So what are the things you need? So it's not always the case that when you are exporting out, you're just making changes and importing back into the exact same thing. What if you've got an export out, but you've got a brand new unit that you just set up on the fly that was created in the software? Now you need to load some data for it. But in order to do that, you did not go in to your data set into your unit screen and select the activate, right? So if it's not been activated here, you can't load data in for that particular activity. But if you've got the pound U pound tab, all you simply have to do is add a new line, and I'm gonna kind of cheat here. Let's say it's unit 550. So I just copied. This doesn't really matter because you can't use this column anymore. And then I can just populate all of my other information that I need to here in order to activate it. Once I load this screen, it will allow anything else that I have, because I'm assuming now I'm going to populate. Let's delete all the extra stuff, because remember, we're not going to import what we don't mean to import. So let's say I really needed to do an APB 23 entry for unit 550. And I am going to put something on. So let me delete that. And I'm going to put something into the RTP. So that's, let's see. Okay. If I don't have unit 550 on this pound U tab, the system will not take this entry when I try to reload it. So it's one of the reasons that when the export happens, it drops these two tabs in as well to allow you to do that for brand new units that coming in. And let's say for this unit 550, now I also need to put something to maybe the blended state. So I'm gonna delete these other rows. I'm gonna change this to unit 550, and I will delete these. And of course, update whatever I need to update here. That will allow me to put an entry in for the blended state on this line item as well. All right, so if I don't have the blended state activated in this sheet, I will not be able to load anything on the pound STD pound tab. So I'll just pop into one other thing so that you can get a sense. I'll just select perms and do that export. Call that perms. And you'll be able to see that what comes out, we'll have some similar items, but we'll have some tabs that are different. So now with the perms, once again, I've got my pound S and my pound U, but now instead of temporary difference tabs, I've got perm tabs. So what happens if I come back into the software and I inadvertently picked the temp tab and loaded it into my perm area? So I can now go here and import, and I just have to go find the file to import it in. So what happens if I inadvertently pick the temp file instead of the perm? Will that load? And the answer is that it will not load here. Or I should clarify that these two tabs will not load, right? But you notice the pound S and the pound U tab, we had commonalities. So it will load the data for the states and the units. So the unit 550 would then get activated, but the temp items would not load. We have to be in the temp tab to actually load the temp data. So if you are loading across types of data, perms, if you've got a file and you need to load perms and you need to load temps and maybe you need to load after apportionment, then you are always going to go back to the data set itself and do your load from this area, because this area will allow you to load everything within the data set from the full file. But if you want to load specific items, then you are going to need to go to the specific tab in order to load that data, temp or perm. Hope you found this helpful. Look forward to seeing you on another session.